Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to start in a place that it sort of defies modern logistics, but it perfectly captures this profound, really ancient human ambition.
Right.
I want you to just, close your eyes for a second and picture an airport,
Mm-hmm.
but not one of those huge, sprawling hubs of glass and steel. This one is carved entirely by hand.
Cleared right out of the jungle.
Exactly. Meticulously cleared from this heavy, humid, green jungle in the South Pacific on the island of Tanna in Vanuatu.
And this runway, this strip of land, it's maintained with absolute seriousness. But you won't find it on any commercial flight map. It's just not there.
And if you were to walk along it, you'd see the aircraft that's sitting there, ready for takeoff.
And it's a marvel of devotion, isn't it?
It really is. The fuselage is woven from straw. The wings are these carefully lashed bamboo poles.
And the engine. I mean, the engine is just this sacred arrangement of dirt and vines. It's just waiting for a spark that is never going to come.
And the whole scene is anchored by the air traffic controller.
The high priest of the whole operation.
Right. He stands there, on vigil, sometimes for days. He's wearing these headphones carved from wood, pressed right up against his ears.
Speaking into a radio made from bark.
Yeah, shouting coordinates, declarations of readiness into the tropical silence.
And he is utterly 100% sincere.
For 80 years. 80 years these men have been keeping this watch, waiting for a plane.
A plane that hasn't landed since 1945.
So what we're diving into today isn't just, this historical oddity of the cargo cult, specifically the John Frum movement.
No, it's much deeper. Our source material for this, Bamboo Runway, a mere reflecting belief, makes it really clear.
It's a mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is not a study of some quote-unquote primitive tribe that got confused by technology. It's a mirror that reflects the terrifying power of human belief.
And the desperation of our own logic, right? The pressure we feel to put a narrative, some kind of order, onto what is just chaos.
That's it, precisely.
So that's the mission for our deep dive today. First, we have to do the historical work. We need to trace the John Frum movement, understand the theological cataclysm that created it.
And the heartbreaking ingenuity that keeps it alive.
But then, and this is the important part, we pivot. We turn that lens around inward. And we ask you, the listener, why do we, here, right now, surrounded by all this technology, still build our own bamboo runways?
Well, what is that specific irreplaceable cargo that you're waiting for?
And what are the useless, ritualized things you're doing every single day to try and summon it?
To really get the scale of the shock, this cataclysm we mentioned, we have to first understand what life was like before the 1940s.
Yeah, the baseline.
The baseline. The people of Vanuatu, their existence wasn't, simple. It was incredibly sophisticated, a completely closed cosmological loop.
What does that mean, a closed loop?
Well, their universe made sense on its own terms. It was rational, internally consistent. It was all based on direct contact with their environment, guided by ancestor spirits, strict customs, and the rhythms of the earth.
So prosperity in that system was very clearly defined.
Oh, absolutely. It was directly proportional to effort.
Your hard work.
Your hard work, your deep ancestral knowledge, and, having the favor of your community. If you wanted food, you had to master these incredibly specific, physically draining skills.
Hunting, refishing, tilling the soil.
Exactly. Prosperity was earned with sweat, tangible, immediate labor. This system worked for thousands of years. It created this really deep-seated definition of work versus reward.
And then that entire system, that closed loop, was just shattered.
Violently, suddenly, completely. The source calls the arrival of World War II a theological cataclysm.
Because the world they knew, its rules, its limits, what was real, it just ended the moment the American fleet appeared on the horizon.
And the scale of it is just. It's almost impossible for us to imagine. The U.S. military needed a forward base to fight the Japanese Empire.
And they chose these tiny remote islands.
Right. And think about the numbers. On an island that might have had a few tens of thousands of people, suddenly 300,000 Americans arrived.
300,000.
It felt like it happened overnight. It wasn't an expedition. It was like a whole civilization was just transplanted into their backyard.
For the local people, it must have felt apocalyptic.
It was. There was no time for a gradual understanding, no slow adaptation. It was an instant flood of material wealth and machines that just defied everything they understood about physics, about cause and effect.
And the things the Americans brought with them, the cargo, they must have seemed like actual miracles.
They were. They were immediate, undeniable proof that these newcomers were operating outside the normal rules of the universe. They had these enormous ships that moved without sails.
Driven by some unseen thundering force.
And the aircraft. Birds that roared and swallowed men, as the source puts it. They'd just appear from the clouds and vanish minutes later.
They were literally manipulating reality.
But the real constant day-to-day miracle was the sheer amount and the type of cargo. They had boxes of food that never spoiled.
Tinned meat, spam, rice, sugar.
Things that required zero daily effort from the person who received them. The islanders were experts at preserving food, but nothing like this. This was proof that the Americans had transcended the basic, painful struggle for survival.
And beyond that, they had instant light without fire. Vehicles that moved without being pulled.
And the medicine, this is so powerful. Antibiotics, quick remedies that could stop diseases that were, for the islanders, a death sentence. They were reversing fate itself.
So given their entire worldview, where any great fortune comes from the ancestors or the gods.
The conclusion was unavoidable. This wasn't logistics. The Americans weren't just soldiers with good machines.
They were something else.
They were entities that had seemingly hacked the code of the universe. They were gods, or at the very least, they were the favored servants of gods. Their very presence redefined what it meant to be human.
And that interpretation that the wealth was divine, not manufactured, that's the absolute crucial first step.
It is. Because if these beings have this incredible power, and they bring their whole operation into your home, your first and only job is to figure out, where does that power come from?
So once that initial theological shock started to settle, the islanders became these incredibly meticulous observers, almost obsessive.
And what fascinated them, maybe even more than the machines, was the behavior of these new gods.
Right. They noticed one defining detail that just flew in the face of thousands of years of their tradition.
The Americans didn't work.
Not in any way they could recognize.
Exactly. They weren't hunting, they weren't fishing, they weren't planting crops. They had this infinite abundance without doing any of the physical labor that, for the islanders, defined existence.
So their deduction, given their starting point, was actually flawless.
Perfectly logical.
If they're not working for it, they must be praying for it. They must have some secret, superior kind of magic, a liturgy that compels the gods to send all these gifts.
And that belief immediately turns every single mundane action on that military base into a religious ritual.
Something to be studied.
Studied and replicated. Because if you filter the bureaucracy and the sheer discipline of a huge U.S. military operation through that lens, with no concept of industrial scale.
It's all just liturgy. Incomprehensible liturgy. Every action must have some profound spiritual purpose, because the result, the endless stream of cargo, was clearly supernatural.
Let's look at what they saw. What specific behaviors became sacred rites? The marching.
Right. The Americans would march in these perfect rectangles. They'd stand rigidly in formation for long periods.
This wasn't seen as military drill. It was interpreted as a kind of sacred discipline movement, a way of showing you were spiritually ready, pure enough to receive the gifts.
Then there was the raising of the flags, these colorful pieces of fabric going up and down poles every day.
These were powerful symbols. They must have been a way to communicate with the source of the bounty, to show your intention or ask for favor. That daily ceremony was seen as a critical channel to the divine.
And they saw the Americans meticulously painting symbols on themselves.
What we would call uniform insignias,
Yeah.
rank markers, unit patches.
To them, these were holy sigils, marks that identified you as one of the chosen, one of the favored. The uniform was the priest's robe.
And the rank was a measure of your spiritual power.
But the most crucial ritual, the one that really catalyzed everything, was the radios.
The metal boxes. They'd see men sitting alone, chanting these strange phrases, military jargon, codes, supply requests, into these boxes with glowing lights.
And this was obviously the main channel, the high-level communication. They weren't transmitting data. They were speaking the prayers, the demands that made the gifts fall from the sky.
And this leads to that critical moment, the moment where a simple correlation becomes a theological fact.
They watched the sequence again and again and again.
The rituals are performed. The marching, the flag raising, the chanting into the boxes.
And then a short time later, the sky would open up.
Giant silver birds would descend, disgorging an endless stream of cargo.
It wasn't just a theory, it was an observed, repeatable fact in their world.
The rituals summoned the wealth. The Americans had the secret words, the secret liturgy, that compelled the ancestors to send the goods. It was a perfect feedback loop. It had to be true.
It was what the source calls a theological breakthrough. But it was a breakthrough based on seeing the result while completely missing the process.
That's the key. They had no idea about global industry, about massive supply chains, about the education required to build and fly a plane. They only saw right A leads to miracle B.
And that's the intellectual error we have to really unpack, because it's an error we repeat all the time.
It's pattern matching versus system understanding. They matched the pattern A follows B, but they couldn't see the massive, invisible system required for B to even exist.
They were focused on the dashboard, the visible rituals.
And they completely missed the engine, the factory, the millions of people back in America working to supply that base.
Because it's just easier, isn't it? It's more comforting to believe in a simple ritual than it is to grapple with the crushing complexity of the real system.
And they believed they now had the key, the shortcut to prosperity. They just needed to learn the steps.
And then it all just stopped.
Just like that. In 1945, the gods packed up and vanished. The war was over, the bases were dismantled with the same shocking speed they were built. The silver birds just stopped flying.
The silence must have been devastating.
Oh, the economic vacuum, the profound sense of abandonment, as the source puts it. This incredible wealth had been demonstrated, promised, and then just withdrawn with no explanation.
And the human mind can't accept that. It can't accept that something so wonderful was just random.
Exactly. The mind needs a narrative. If the flow of goods was divine, its end must also have a theological reason. It couldn't be that the system just shut down. It had to be that the rituals stopped, or that the gods were offended somehow.
So the answer they came to was, in its own way, brilliant and heartbreaking.
Inevitable.
The cargo stopped because the ritual stopped.
So if we could just perfectly replicate what the Americans were doing,
We can reopen the channel. We can compel the silver birds to come back and fulfill the promise.
and that powerful, desperate idea is what led to the birth of the cargo cult. And it's a concept rooted entirely in what anthropologists call sympathetic magic.
Can you explain that a little? Sympathetic magic.
It's a very old, very human belief. It's the idea that by meticulously imitating the form of something, you can capture its essence, its power. The ritual influences reality just by resembling it.
So a new religion was literally forged from memory and desperation.
And they started the replications, they built the bamboo airstrips, cleared them, prepared them, designed to welcome the planes home.
And this wasn't a game. It was. It was civil engineering driven by theological belief.
And if the Americans valued marching, they would carve these incredibly detailed rifles from local wood. They would practice the same precise, rigorous military drills they'd watched for years.
So the discipline of the march becomes the prayer.
It's the core prayer, a painful physical demonstration of your commitment, your spiritual purity, designed to compel the ancestors to act.
And they'd find scraps of old uniforms, and they'd paint the letters USA on their chests.
Not just as decoration, as holy sigils, marks to show they were the favored ones ready to receive the shipment. The form had to be perfect to capture the power.
And at the center of all this, a Messiah figure emerges, John Frum.
And like any good Messiah, his origins are shrouded in this powerful mystery. The source suggests he's probably a composite figure, embodying the best traits of all the soldiers they met.
Or maybe it was just a simple misunderstanding, a serviceman introducing himself by saying,
John from America.
which just gets heard and repeated and elevated into the divine name, John Frum.
But it's the promise of John Frum that has sustained this movement for decades. He is the Messiah who promised he would return, and he would bring with him the full, endless wealth of the West.
And crucially, he promised to kick out the colonial powers, who were often quite harsh, and restore their dignity. He is the ultimate promise.
That we have not been forgotten.
The commitment this requires is just. It's profound. We are talking about 80 years of a sustained vigil.
Every single year, on February 15th, John Frum Day, they all gather. They raise the American flag, which is now this incredibly sacred relic.
And they march. They perform the rituals, perfectly replicated, waiting for the sound of engines.
Engines that never come.
And what's so fascinating is that the failure of the plane to arrive doesn't disprove the faith.
No, it reinforces it. It doesn't mean the ritual is wrong. It means the ritual wasn't perfect enough, or that the worshipers need more patience, more dedication. The lack of an outcome gets folded back into the narrative, making the faith even stronger.
It's how all durable belief systems work, isn't it?
It is. They are committed to the memory of a miracle, even when the material evidence is long gone. It's a powerful testament to our human need to impose a hopeful story onto a cold, indifferent universe.
Okay, so as we make this turn, we have to be very clear. We need to reject that tendency toward what the source calls amused superiority.
Absolutely.
hmm
Because if we just chuckle at the idea of a straw airplane on a jungle runway,
We are completely missing the point. The absolute fact that we are all, in different ways, doing the exact same thing in our own hyper-industrialized, data-driven lives.
the psychological mechanism is identical. Our brain is a pattern-seeking machine. It is desperate to impose a story on chaos.
So we see someone who is successful, we identify their external ritualized behaviors, the form, and then we mistake that correlation for direct causation.
And we completely ignore the complex, messy, internal, invisible system that actually created that success.
We fall into the trap of the ritual because it's comforting, it's simple.
It is infinitely easier to wake up at 4 a.m. and drink a green juice and post about your hustle online.
Then it is to spend 2 decades mastering advanced calculus or building a network or securing venture capital. The simple ritual gives us the illusion of control.
So let's look at some of these modern rituals.
Yeah.
The corporate cult. We are obsessed with the routines of successful people. We treat their habits like sacred texts.
The morning routine is the ultimate bamboo runway ritual.
It really is. We hear a CEO meditates at 5 a.m. We assume that if we just replicate that schedule, we unlock the flow of wealth.
But the truth is, that CEO is probably meditating at 5 a.m. because they already have a personal chef and secure childcare and enough wealth that their day isn't consumed by just surviving.
The meditation is a byproduct of their success, not the engine that created it.
But we still do it. We pursue the ritual. We believe that by carving the wooden rifle, by waking up at 5 a.m., we will compel the universe to deliver our cargo, the promotion, the investment.
It's sympathetic magic for capitalism.
And then there's the accumulation of objects. Our modern cargo, we value them for their talismanic power.
Degrees, certifications, luxury brands.
Yeah.
We chase that advanced degree not always for the knowledge, but because the piece of paper itself is a holy sigil. It signals we are worthy of a higher status.
The source has an analogy here that really hits hard.
A luxury handbag.
Yeah. What is a luxury handbag if not a piece of cargo that we believe grants us entry into a higher caste?
It's seen as a prerequisite for success, a signal that you belong. Which, in terms of logic, is a direct parallel to painting USA on your chest and waiting for a Jeep to appear.
And what about the digital version of chanting into the metal box? Our relationship with social media algorithms.
Oh, absolutely. We spend agonizing hours trying to figure out the secret liturgy of the algorithm, this invisible logic that decides who gets fame and who gets ignored.
We use the right hashtags, post at the optimal time, we replicate viral formats.
We're treating this digital ecosystem like a fickle god whose favor we have to win through these specific external rituals. We are shouting into the digital static, desperate for the algorithm to bless us with a shipment of attention.
What's interesting there, though, is that the islanders were acting from a place of, well, ignorance about physics.
Whereas we are acting from a place of willful ignorance about psychology and data science. We know it's a logical system, but we choose to treat it mystically. We hope for magic instead of doing the hard work of mastery.
Let's take the wellness industry. It is just full of these behaviors.
Rife with them. People adopt these extreme diets or supplement routines based on what a celebrity or an influencer says.
They're replicating the form of success they see, the guru's vitality, their wealth, without understanding the complex individual biological system of their own body.
They believe that by performing the ritual drinking that specific juice, they will unlock the guru's essence, their vitality. They're focused on the product, the juice, and ignoring the need for actual scientific knowledge.
It's the same mistake, confusing the trash, the temporary product, for the treasure, which is the durable knowledge.
And finally, just look at how some people approach the stock market, treating the charts like they're some kind of omen.
Right. The charts are speaking to me, spending hours looking for mistal patterns and what is essentially random noise.
We're trying to divine the will of the invisible hand, convinced that if we just find that magical formula, the silver plane will land in our brokerage account and we can bypass all the boring, messy realities of economics and risk and, frankly, luck.
It all comes back to that same hope for external salvation. We're all waiting on our own personal bamboo runways, convinced that if we just get the dance steps right.
The perfect routine, the perfect status symbols, the perfect chant into the glowing screen.
The universe will finally deliver our personal shipment of abundance and validation.
And the real tragedy is that, just like the Islanders, We're often so busy looking for the cargo that we don't realize that the act of waiting has become the entire structure of our life.
Now let's analyze the deepest tragedy of the cargo cult, which is it's much more profound than just a plane not showing up.
It's not that the plane never comes.
No, the tragedy is the deep foundational belief that the cargo itself, the material stuff, is the answer to human fulfillment.
The islanders, watching from the outside, they saw the outcome of industrial civilization. The tinned meat, the easy clothes, the tools.
And they assumed that that external wealth equals internal happiness, peace,
Yeah.
power. They drew a straight line from stuff to satisfaction.
But they were fundamentally misled. They couldn't see the shadow side of all that abundance.
They didn't see the chronic anxiety, the alienation, the spiritual hollowness, the violence that so often comes with the modern industrial machine.
The very struggles that lead us to search for our own external salvation today.
They worship the byproduct of our civilization, and this is such a critical distinction.
They mistook the trash for the treasure.
Explain that.
The trash was the temporary consumable goods, the stuff designed to be used and discarded. The treasure was the underlying durable knowledge that made it all possible.
The scientific method, organizational structures, education, engineering.
Exactly. They were fixated on the outcome, the cargo.
Yeah.
And they ignored the difficult, demanding process, which was the science. They wanted a shortcut to the destination, not realizing the value was in the journey of mastery itself.
But while there is that tragedy and their hope being misdirected, there is also this undeniable, really powerful beauty in the movement, in its persistence.
There absolutely is.
Oh.
And we have to give that proper weight.
80 years of a sustained vigil, based on a memory and a promise, in a world that is obsessed with immediate proof. That level of generational commitment to a spiritual idea is, well, it's arguably more profound than many of the shallow commitments we make to our own modern fads.
And it raises this essential question that forces you to move beyond simple judgment.
Who is truly more lost in this picture?
Is it the man who builds a runway from bamboo, who stands there with this profound, disciplined hope in his heart for a delivery he believes will bring dignity to his community?
He's poor in material goods, but he is incredibly rich in sustained purpose.
Or is it the man sitting in a real aluminum airplane, surrounded by the literal miracle of modern flight who feels nothing but boredom, or rage about a delay, or contempt because he doesn't have enough legroom?
The man who has the cargo but has lost any capacity for wonder or belief or purpose.
When you think about it that way, it becomes clear that the enduring purpose of the cargo cult was never really about the spam or the jeeps. It evolved.
It became a fight for autonomy.
A fight for self-definition against colonialism. The movement became a strategic spiritual rejection of the powers who were constantly telling them they were backward, superstitious, that they needed to be managed.
So by creating their own army and their own flag and their own airport,
Their own theology.
they were declaring equality with the gods. They were asserting their sovereignty over their own destiny.
They were shouting into the static of colonial control, saying, "We too can command the sky. We get to define what is sacred. We get to define what is prosperous." It was a reclaiming of their own narrative, a political resistance disguised as a religion.
It delivered the spiritual cargo of dignity, even if the material cargo never landed.
But even this incredible resilience is facing its greatest threat now.
The internet.
The cold, unrelenting clarity of the internet. As smartphones slowly make their way into even the most remote villages, the mystery that sustained the cult for so long is just evaporating.
The younger generation can just Google World War II logistics. They can understand supply chains, track real flights in real time.
The magical warmth of the mystery is being replaced by the complex, demanding data of reality.
But the elders persist.
Because they understand what they're guarding now is no longer just the hope of a delivery. They're guarding the collective, sacred memory of a time when the sky opened up and for a moment, chaos was replaced by a miracle.
They're guarding the tradition that gave them power, that let them declare 80 years ago, we are worthy of the same abundance.
So the ritual, regardless of the outcome, continues to deliver that irreplaceable cargo of shared identity and community.
In the end, the bamboo runway really is this powerful, profound monument to the human capacity for longing.
It just stands there in the jungle, decaying a little, getting repaired season after season by hands that are dedicated to this universal dream.
It's a silent testament to the idea that we are all always waiting for something from the outside.
A salvation, a breakthrough, a shipment that will save us from the mundane struggle of just being.
We are all scanning our own horizons, convinced that the key to our prosperity, our validation, is just doing the right dance move.
Acquiring the right talisman.
Or chanting the right command into the glowing box.
The sun sets over the island of Tana, the jungle screams with the sound of insects, and the wooden radio stays silent.
But the controller doesn't take off his carved headphones. He adjusts the dial, listens only to the static of the universe, and he waits. The plane, he tells himself, is just late. But it is coming.
So we'll leave you with this thought to reflect on in your own complex modern life. What is the specific essential cargo that you are currently waiting for?
The one thing you believe will finally validate your existence and bring you peace.
And what is the secret, seemingly logical ritual that you are performing today, this week, this year, in your own life to summon it?
Think about the design and the necessity of your own bamboo runways.
That's all for today.
We'll see you again in the next discovery.
Thank you for listening.